This video is brought to you by Surfshark VPN. Stick around to the end of the video for a special offer they're making available through my channel. Okay, so here's how it went down. I was playing Robocop at home, and all of a sudden I get a message from this game journalist friend of mine, I won't say who, and he's like, so, what do you think of the new Steam Deck? And I'm like, what? There's a new Steam Deck? Total shock to me, because ever since Valve released the Steam Deck, they've been saying there will not be a new Steam Deck for a long time. In fact, Lawrence Yang, one of the main designers of the Steam Deck, came onto the FPS podcast and told me to my face that there would not be a new Steam Deck for many years. So when I heard that there was a new Steam Deck, I was like, can't believe Lawrence lied to me, man. I thought we had something. What the hell? Turns out, he didn't lie. Valve have consistently said not to expect a Steam Deck 2 anytime soon. In fact, they said as much last week when they said that the technology for the Steam Deck 2 does not yet exist. But all of that talk does not rule out the possibility of a mid-gen refresh of the Steam Deck, and that was what my friend was talking about. So when my friend told me about this new Steam Deck, he's like, don't worry, it's basically the same, it just has an OLED screen and more battery life. And already, I was hyped because OLED screens are a big upgrade in terms of the viewing experience. I remember getting my Nintendo Switch OLED, which I kind of bought as an impulse purchase, and being like, wow, this is a big deal. A massive difference in terms of how much the OLED screen pops versus the original Switch LCD. And that was really the Steam Deck's biggest weakness, the screen. The color recreation didn't hit quite right, and when combined with the lower resolution and those big beefy bezels, the screen definitely felt like the most compromised part of a device that was otherwise pretty remarkable. So the promise of OLED plus more battery life was already enough to get me very excited about what this was. It wasn't until I got my hands on this thing and started playing around with it that I was like, hang on a second, there's a hell of a lot more going on here than just a new screen and some more battery. It was at that point that I went and consulted the documentation that Valve sent along with the review unit, and I was absolutely blown away by the sheer number of things that the Steam Deck OLED delivers, and that Valve just aren't talking about. It's almost like they're trying to keep it a secret. If you want to see all the improvements, you actually have to go to their website, and there's a little half covered up section that you need to click to expand, and when you do that, it shows you that there are literally 37 improvements that Valve have made to this deck. 37! And publicly, they're only talking about like 2, better screen and better battery. But did you know that they completely redesigned the haptics, the responsiveness of the touchscreen, the fidelity of the trackpads? They have all new thumbstick materials, making them not only more grippy, but also dust resistant. The machine is lighter, cooler, has a bigger screen, and actually runs a few percentage points faster, at least according to Digital Foundry. Have you ever seen a company undersell a product as much as this? Like, Apple will hype up a keynote presentation for 6 weeks and spend 45 minutes to announce that they're adding USB-C to their devices because they are legally obligated to do so. But here, Valve are offering up what is actually the biggest and most feature-packed mid-console refresh in the history of consoles, and Valve sent out little more than a press release being like, oh, please consult the hidden drop-down menu for more information about all this incredible shit that we did. So I've spent the past week and a bit playing around with the Steam Deck OLED, and the more I play of it, the more I'm like, I just can't believe how much Valve have undersold this. For the record, the Steam Deck was easily my favorite handheld console of all time by a significant margin. I've owned all of the major handhelds right back to the original Game Boy, but I've never been a handheld gamer. I've always had a Game Boy Advance or a DS or a PS Vita or whatever, but I've never used them as much as I feel like I should because I've just preferred a larger screen and more comfortable controls. The Steam Deck totally changed all that. As soon as I got it, I just immediately fell in love with it, and I've used it pretty much every day since then, except when I got my ROG Ally and I started using that as kind of like my daily driver thing. But long story short, if I didn't have to record footage for reviews, then the Steam Deck would actually be the default machine that I would use to play video games. The Steam Deck OLED takes my favorite console and makes it significantly better. And not a little bit better, by the way, but like significantly better. I don't think you need to buy this if you already have a Steam Deck and you use it casually. The base model is still fantastic and still more than meets your needs. However, if you haven't yet pulled the trigger and you were looking for a good excuse, or if you're like a Steam Deck power user and the deck is your main driver, then yeah, I absolutely think that this is worth upgrading to, like no question about that. Let's talk about why, and obviously the best place to start is going to be the screen. Before we begin though, I will just say that I'm going to show you 2 Steam Decks in this video. The white one is the original LCD Steam Deck. I just put a white D-brand skin on it. The black Steam Deck is the new OLED. Also important to note that this LCD Steam Deck features the normal glossy screen, while the OLED features the anti-glare etched glass. This is important in terms of what you'll see in this video, because under lights, the anti-glare screen is going to catch and diffuse light across the screen, which makes it look a little more washed out than the glossy screen, but it's meant to do that to reduce the presence of distracting reflections. I'll talk more about that later, but for now, I just want to say that the OLED looks even better in more realistic lighting conditions than it does in this video, when I have to blast lights on it so that the camera can actually film it. So let's talk about OLED. If you're not familiar with what that means, it basically means that the screen is significantly brighter with better overall color recreation. So here you can see some comparisons I filmed. These comparisons really undersell how stark the difference is, not only because of the anti-glare glass I mentioned earlier, but also because a camera can't capture the difference fully. Trust me though, it is a very, very big difference, to the point where I now look at the old Steam Deck LCD thing and I kind of feel like it's a bit washed out, and I just immediately want to get back to the OLED, which just is so much brighter and the recreation of color is just so much more accurate. So that's already huge, but when it comes to this screen, we're actually only just getting started. In addition to offering OLED, the screen also supports full HDR, and not that fake shit they put on monitors, by the way. I'm talking real, proper, up to 1000 nits brightness HDR. Playing games like Ori and the Will of the Wisps, which is still to this day one of the best HDR showcases available, the difference between the LCD and the OLED is incredibly stark. Again, not something easily demonstrated here, but the brightness and contrast HDR allows for are massive visual upgrades. But wait, there's more! Not only does this screen feature OLED with proper HDR support, but it's got a 90Hz refresh rate compared to the 60Hz on the LCD. A lot of you already know what that means, but if you don't, it basically means that your screen is able to refresh more times per second, which results in a smoother experience if your frame rate is able to keep pace with that, or even if it isn't, but we'll talk about that in a second. So playing Cocoon on this thing at 90 frames a second on a 90Hz screen, it just feels straight up better than playing it at 60 frames, 60 Hz. Not much better, mind you, because of course 60 Hz, 60 frames, it's fantastic, but it's definitely better, and you feel the difference, you really do. Now, where things get even more interesting when it comes to this refresh rate is that a higher refresh rate screen is able to bring benefit to games even when you're playing them at lower frame rates. It's tricky to explain, but there's a specific ratio relationship between frame rates and refresh rate, and Valve have actually reworked the ability to cap frame rates on your games so that they can take advantage of this with this new higher refresh rate screen. You can cap a game at say 30 FPS, and then the Steam Deck will automatically adjust the refresh rate to account for that, such that the screen will refresh 3 times for every frame. This is particularly important when it comes to things like 35 FPS, 40 FPS, 45 FPS. These are sort of breakpoints that when it comes to playing AAA games on the Steam Deck, this is where you're going to generally land, right? If you cap your frame rate at one of these numbers, the screen will automatically adjust to refresh twice per frame, and that just makes games feel so much better, so much smoother, even though you're running at exactly the same frame rate as before. Finally, a really big change to the screen are the reduced bezels. The old LCD screen had some very chunky bezels, like bigger than the Game Gear. They're notably thinner here, resulting in not only a nicer looking machine, but also a larger screen size. It goes from 7 inches to 7.4. You really don't notice the larger screen size, I don't think, but I think you definitely notice the smaller bezels. Like it just, that you see for sure. Valve have also said that touchscreen responsiveness has also been improved. I haven't really noticed a difference in that since I've always found the touchscreen to be perfectly responsive, but hey, if it's a little bit better, then sure, I'll take it. All right, so let's talk about the anti-glare etched glass thing, because it can be a little bit confusing. So the anti-glare etched glass is only available on the 1TB OLED option, so Valve are implying that this is the best screen option. Now, I had not experienced etched glass for myself until I got this OLED unit, and I really like it because I play games in environments with a fair amount of light going on, and playing it inside, whatever. And for that reason, I've definitely found it's a net benefit to me for sure. But it's not going to be like that for everybody. The reason is because of the way it does this. It diffuses light across the screen, which can make things look a little more washed out. But the alternative to that is a light source bouncing really clearly and really distractingly off your screen. And so I'll take a slightly less vibrant image over that any day of the week. But here's the bottom line though. I don't think anyone really needs the 1TB Steam Deck. I think you can kind of get away with the 512 if you want, and then buy an expanded SD card to get like more storage for better value. And then if you want to get the anti-glare option, you can just buy a screen filter that you can just put on yourself for a couple of bucks, and that will give you the option. So yeah, if you're someone that plays indoors with lights off all the time, you definitely don't need the anti-glare. If you're someone that's commuting on a bus or whatever, or you're playing outside regularly or something, and you have a lot of light being on your screen all the time, then yeah, the anti-glare option is good, but you might not personally like it. In which case, having that screen protector thing that you can just take on and off based on your preference is probably going to be the better option. Okay, so that's the screen. Literally just the screen that we've talked about so far, but there are a lot of other things that we still need to cover. Like, for example, it's quieter. Valve have redone the guts of this thing, including a bigger, quieter fan. It's another one of those things where the Steam Deck was already pretty quiet, even under load, but now it's even more quiet. So yeah, I'll take it. Improved battery life is one of the marquee features of the Steam Deck OLED, with Valve promising 30 to 50% improved battery life. It's hard to test this unless you set up some very specific test conditions, but I will say that anecdotally, I've definitely felt this increased battery capacity, and outlets like Digital Foundry have done the testing, and they've been able to confirm Valve's claims. For me personally, using my Steam Deck at home on the couch or when I'm traveling in my hotel room or whatever, battery's not a huge priority for me because I'm never far away from a charger. But if you're someone that relies on their deck for a daily commute, then that extra 50% battery life could be the difference between the deck covering your round trip versus just one way, especially if you're playing more demanding AAA games. Incidentally, the OLED will charge significantly faster than the previous model. It'll go from 20% battery to 80% in 45 minutes, according to Valve's claims. Plus, the charge cable is longer, and it's got a little logo on the charge cable now. See? It was one of the 37 things they listed on the sheet, so I feel like I should cover it off, you know? Aesthetically, the OLED is identical to the previous model, except for the power button, which is orange. You can see that right there. Ergonomically though, there are some big differences here. The most notable one is that thumbsticks use all new materials. They are now more grippy, which is great because the last ones were a little slippery before, to the point where I had to put little grips on them to fix that. I don't need those grips anymore because the new material just does the job. Apparently this new material is also dust resistant, so okay, sure. The shoulder buttons have also been reworked. They used to be much harder to press at different points. Like if you tried to press them at the top, they were a bit tricky to press versus pressing them at the edge, but now they're just really easy to press no matter where you're pressing them, so that's a big upgrade. The Steam Deck and menu buttons on the bottom left and right have also been reworked. Not gonna lie, these buttons kind of sucked on the previous deck. Like you really had to mash them, and they had this really shitty feel when you press them in. They were the worst buttons on the deck by far, but these ones are better now. They're basically just very clicky, and you don't have to work nearly as hard to like depress them, so they feel great. It's also 30 grams lighter, but I swear to God that that is a lie. Like if I hold my old deck and my new deck, like they feel significantly different. They really do. It's only 30 grams, okay? So obviously I don't know what 30 grams actually feels like, or my brain is just broken. But definitely, when you pick up the OLED, it feels notably lighter. It's not a game changer, obviously, but it's just kind of those, like, one of those nice to have things. Related to ergonomics are haptics. They've been totally redesigned as well, and now feel far more ticky is the best way to describe it. Like before, the haptics had much more of a thud to them, but these feel much closer to what you experience on an iPhone or a PS5 DualSense. They're more subtle without losing any of their effect, and they are definitely a noticeable upgrade. I don't know if you can hear that, but that's what they sound like now. Connected to that, the trackpads have been redesigned to provide more responsiveness, particularly on the edges of the pads. And yeah, again, I noticed it. They definitely feel more precise and easier to use. Previously, I didn't use them much, mainly for some menu navigation stuff here and there. But yeah, you can feel that increased precision with the OLED refresh, and I'm finding myself using them more often as a result, especially when paired with those refresh haptics, which do kick in when you use the trackpad. The last thing I'll say on general feel is that the Steam Deck just feels much more responsive within menus. For sure, it definitely wakes up about 30% faster from being on standby mode, but just even while you're navigating the menus, it feels faster and snappier than it did on the previous version of the deck. That may be to do with the fact that the OLED model has new, faster memory. Now, Valve are not listing performance improvements as part of this launch. I'm sure there's reasons for that, but there are some improvements as a result of this faster memory. The menu experience is definitely one I can attest to, and more detailed testing by Digital Foundry has revealed 5 to 8% increase in frame rate performance depending on the game you're playing and depending on which part of that game you're playing. Bottom line, you definitely would not buy an OLED for more frames per second, and the improvements are so slight that you wouldn't notice them anyway, but you definitely will notice that faster menu experience for sure. A few final things to round this out. The OLED has better Bluetooth. It's got an additional Bluetooth antenna, and it also is running Bluetooth 5.3, which is just a faster and more stable version of Bluetooth. It's also got better Wi-Fi because it's supporting Wi-Fi 6E. Now, this is actually quite a big deal if you are set up for that, right? If you don't have a Wi-Fi 6E enabled router, then you're not going to get any benefit out of it. I do, and so I was able to test it, comparing it to, you know, a 5G connection in my house, and yeah, I'm getting like 50% faster downloads for sure, straight away. So that's really nice. Do note though that, you know, Wi-Fi 6E range is terrible. You need to be really close to your router in order to get some benefit out of that. So if your house is set up for that, fantastic. This is going to be great. I suspect most people don't have a few 6E routers sitting around their home, so probably more limited benefit for most people. But if you use your Steam Deck in one specific room most of the time, or you always take it somewhere when you want to do a download, then yeah, you're definitely going to notice much faster download speeds on 6E. The speakers are also better. They're louder, clearer, and have better bass response. It's also easier to mod and repair the OLED because Valve have used fewer screws in its construction, and they're a new type of screw that are easier to work with. Hell, they even made the carry case better. Look at this. You can take out this inner shell to reveal a smaller, sleeker shell. This was one of my biggest issues with the original deck because the carry case was super strong, but it was also massive and it would take up like your entire backpack. Now there's this option for when you don't need all that heavy duty protection, and this is what I will use most of the time now because it'll be enough. So let's take a step back now and list what I just listed. There's a new screen, it's bigger, it's OLED, it's HDR, it's 90 Hz, and it's got smaller bezels. It's lighter, it has 30 to 50% more battery life, it runs cooler, it has more responsive touchpads, and the touchscreen is also more responsive. Many of the buttons feel better to press, the analog sticks are more grippy, it has all new haptics, it runs faster when navigating the OS, and you get a few more frames in games. It has better and faster Bluetooth and Wi-Fi, it's got better speakers, a better carry case, and did I mention that the charger has a logo on it now? I mean, come on! Point is, that's a lot. In the history of video game consoles, there has never, ever been a mid-gen console refresh that has sported an improvements list this long. If this had a new, faster chipset and was like the Steam Deck 2, we would all be stunned at how many new things Valve had added on top of the increase in horsepower. We'd all be like, yep, this certainly feels like all of the list of improvements you'd expect to see from a next-gen upgrade. Only this is not a next-gen upgrade. This is a mid-gen upgrade. And this is the craziest part. It's cheaper. So here's how this works. The prices for the 3 tiers stays the same. The base model, which is still the original LCD model by the way, that's at the same price point, but it's now got 256 gigabytes of storage instead of 64. The mid tier used to have 128 gigabytes of storage, but now has 512, and that'll get you the OLED screen. The top tier used to have 512 gigabytes of storage, but it now has 1 terabyte, and that is the only one with the anti-glare edge glass. Like, there is no other company on the fucking planet who would charge for this product in this way. No other company. How could you give us this amount of new shit and then charge us less for it? What the fuck are you smoking, Gaben? And by the way, you can actually get the old Steam Deck models cheaper because Valve are trying to empty the inventory of the older stuff. So yeah, like, you can still get them. You can get an absolute bargain on them. And that's just another way to get your hands on a Steam Deck really cheap if you want it. So given how good this device is, I think it really prompts us to rethink the current lay of the land when it comes to the whole handheld PC market. For a while now, I've been using the ROG Ally alongside my Steam Deck. If you're not familiar with that, it's from ASUS. It's more powerful than the Steam Deck in terms of the frame rates it can produce, and it has a bigger, higher resolution screen. The big difference though is that the ROG Ally runs Windows, whereas the Steam Deck uses Valve's Steam OS built on Linux. That means you can easily install non-Steam products like something on the Epic Games Store or a Game Pass game, for example. You can sideload Windows onto a Steam Deck. In fact, you can get pretty much anything running on a Steam Deck that you can on a PC, but it does require more steps, and some of those steps can be tricky if you're not comfortable with that sort of stuff. So for a while now, people have been asking me, what should I get? Should I get the ROG Ally or should I get the Steam Deck? The ROG Ally, by the way, is $699 US compared to as low as $350 for the deck or up to $650 for the 1TB OLED model. So to this point, I've been saying to people, it really depends. Like, if you are tech savvy and you don't mind messing around with stuff, then the limitations of the deck might not bother you because you can work around them. But at the same time, the ROG Ally gives you more headroom in terms of power, so you can do some pretty crazy shit with it if you know what you're doing. If you're someone who uses your handheld away from a power point, like a daily commute or whatever, then the deck is probably the better option because battery life on the ROG Ally is pretty shit unless you really turn down a lot of its settings, in which case, why are you using it at all? If you want a bigger, higher resolution screen, then for sure, the ROG Ally is the way to go. But if you value a device that's really pick up and play and you don't have to fuck around with the whole handheld Windows experience, then the deck is the obvious choice. You get what I'm saying? To this point, when people ask me this, I've always been like, it's a real toss-up, it depends on a lot of factors, etc, etc. With the release of the Steam Deck OLED, I feel quite differently about that question now. Now if someone came to me and said, what should I buy? I'd just be like, dude, just get the OLED. The OLED screen is smaller and lower resolution, but it's so bright and the color is so beautiful. It now hits up to 90 Hz, which makes it more competitive versus the ROG Ally's 120 Hz variable refresh rate. The deck also runs much quieter. The ROG is loud, man. I mean, like properly loud. Sometimes it just sounds like a jet engine in your hand. It's not a huge problem, obviously, but like, yeah, if you're playing it for long periods of time, that sound definitely catches on your ear. Yeah, no doubt about it. Battery life is a really big one. Asus essentially designed a device that I'd argue kind of needs to be plugged in to reach its full potential. Valve, on the other hand, have made their device within the constraints of existing battery limitations, and so it's always had better battery life, but now it is significantly more so. If battery life is at all a consideration for you when you were thinking about these devices, then absolutely go with the OLED. There's just no question about that. There's also the matter of ergonomics, and I do think the Asus ROG Ally is comfortable, no doubt about it, but I do think the Steam Deck is more comfortable, and even more so now that it's a little bit lighter. The biggest difference, though, in terms of like overall comfort and user experience is the fact that the Asus runs on Windows. Handheld Windows is very, very not good. It's just a massive pain in the ass. If you've ever had to use it, it sucks. Like you have to like use your fat fingers to like click on some little minimize window, and you know the on-screen keyboard doesn't come up half the time, and when it does come up, it like blocks the thing that you're trying to type into, so you can't see. There are two different programs that you need to maintain in order to keep this thing fully updated with like drivers and whatever. Yeah, it definitely crashes a lot more. There's no doubt about that. Yeah, there's a lot of problems with Windows handheld for sure, to the point where Microsoft have said that they are going to invest more in that ecosystem, and Xbox have also said that they would look to do more in that space too. They're acknowledging that it's a problem. Whereas the Steam Deck, SteamOS is built to be a handheld experience. Everything about it is just so seamless, and it just works. And that, from a comfort perspective, is the deciding factor for me. Like when I look at picking up both devices, I can just know that when I pick up the Steam Deck, it's going to be an easy experience. Whereas I pick this up and I know there's just a little bit of mucking around that I have to do every time I really want to get it working, especially if I want to try and make any changes to or install new things or whatever. Like there's a lot of stuff there, you know? With the Steam Deck OLED's improved screen and higher refresh rate and HDR, I think some of the competitive advantage of the ROG Ally has been eroded to the point now where I focus a lot more on other things. And when I look at that list of pros and cons, yeah, the Steam Deck just becomes a much, much easier choice. There are way more pros and way fewer cons on the Steam Deck. And so that's why, at this point, I definitely expect that it will become my default machine for a long time. ROG Ally is still great, by the way. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's a bad machine. I'm just saying I will be using my Deck OLED almost exclusively going forward, I think, because it's just ticks so many boxes for me. You know what I mean? But yeah, so I think overall, Valve did an incredible job. Incredible. It solved so many of the problems that we had with the original deck. Problems we didn't even know we had. Like the case, for example. Like, why did you change the case? I don't know. Why did you put a logo on the charger? I don't know, but I'm into it, you know? And I think the fact that they've managed to ship this product in this way, and they've managed to increase the storage space while keeping the cost the same, which effectively makes it cheaper. Insanity. Truly insane. So, if you haven't yet pulled the trigger on a Steam Deck, this is a really good excuse to do that. Like I said, I don't think you need to buy this if you are already happy and well serviced with your Steam Deck. But if you want to treat yourself, or if you're a power user of your deck and it's like your main thing, then I think you are going to be extremely satisfied with the upgrades that you get for your money spent, for sure. Yeah. Cool. All right, that's pretty much all I got for this video. Bit different this time. We're doing a bit of face cam stuff. Mix it up. Something a bit different, make it fresh. Let me know what you think. Drop the video a like if you like it. Dislike it if you didn't. Subscribe if you want more. And thanks for stopping by. I'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye. Don't you just hate it when some big TV show is premiering on a streaming service and you renew your subscription, log in, search around for it, only to then discover that it's not available in your region? Believe me, that is a pain that we in Australia know all too well, since a ridiculous amount of content is geo-blocked for us over here. It really sucks. Enter Surfshark VPN, the best means of sidestepping all of that geo-block nonsense, so you can watch whatever the hell you want, whenever the hell you damn please. In just a few simple clicks, Surfshark lets you connect to their global network of nodes, so in 1 minute you're in Sydney, and the very next you're in London, or you're in Delaware for some reason. Point is, Surfshark lets you enjoy TV, movies, and games without having to worry about geoblock, and depending on where you live, that is a pretty big deal. That's not all though. Surfshark VPN is also the best means of protecting your online data, your passwords, your IP addresses, your personal information. Surfshark VPN encrypts your online data, protecting you from identity thefts and hacks, and their clean web feature automatically blocks over 1 million known malicious websites, phishing methods, and other threats. They also offer additional tools for even more online security, like Surfshark Alert, which informs you when a breach has occurred that might impact you, or Surfshark Antivirus, giving you real-time protection as well as regularly scheduled scans. In 2023, we can't just trust every website we're shopping on to keep our data safe. You have to take your own steps to protect your own data, otherwise these sorts of hacks and scams are inevitable. You can use Surfshark on multiple devices at once, which is something that almost no other VPN allows. It's available on pretty much every platform you can think of. It has 24/7 customer support, and it has a full 30-day money-back guarantee. Best of all, they're offering a special Black Friday discount to viewers of this channel. Click the link below and use offer code SKILLUP to get an additional 6 months free. That's an additional 6 months free of safe and secure internet browsing when you visit surfshark.deals/skillup and use offer code SKILLUP at checkout. Thanks Surfshark for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.